to anybody or to the junior seminar class. This lecture is titled Dialogue, and on this lecture it's a continuation of what we have been talking about before, which was in the previous lectures we had the process lecture, and before that the concept lecture, and then we had two more lectures related to process, the one about process and concept for designers, and the one about, what was the other one? Oh, putting it kind of all together, process, concept, and product together, looking at some contemporary artists. So this one, the dialogue lecture, is about the idea that art is primarily a dialogue between artists, young artists, and older artists, and that part of the process of making art is about being in dialogue, making sure to pay attention, and so to the art that's made at the same time as you, and paying attention to the art that was made before you. And so my point here is to point out different artists and how their art can't be seen as being just in a vacuum, but being part of a greater dialogue. So we're starting with Jeff Koons. And when Jeff Koons began the beginning of his work, he was, the very first pieces that he made were almost entirely vacuum cleaners, and vacuum cleaners in plexiglass boxes, often with lighting underneath, like the examples you see here. And his direct inspiration was Duchamp, and specifically Duchamp's ready-mades, like the urinal, and known as fountain. And of course, putting things in plexiglass boxes is something that we also associate with Damien Hirst. And so here's a Damien Hirst with the tiger shark, which I think is the very first shark piece he did. Um, but he's done other animals as well, some kind of sliced into pieces like the cow. And I think in the very first Sensation show, he had both the lamb and the tiger shark in the show. And here's a funny piece that another artist made, kind of mocking Damien Hirst, where Damien Hirst is in the plexiglass box and the cows get to observe him. Um, and here are some other examples of people making various types of funny or controversial or shocking art related to the work that Damien Hirst has made. And when you think about those cows in the field looking at Damien Hirst, the first thing that made me think about is this painting by Mark Tansey, who is this painting is at the Metropolitan Museum of Art. I remember seeing it when I was a young kid going to the Met. And Mark Tansey's worked as an illustrator. He was a kind of late 70s, early 80s was kind of the high point of his career, and worked both as an illustrator and as a studio contemporary artist, and worked in this kind of photo-based manner. And one of his more famous pieces is this one, and this painting is titled Action Painting, which I think is absolutely hilarious. It's a commentary on the idea of painting, being a representation of gesture and action. And in this case, it's kind of making fun of that, like the idea that, these people could paint the launch of a space shuttle in action would be, it's absolutely impossible. In a matter of 3 seconds, the thing is so far gone, you can't see anything. But that idea of mocking abstract expressionism, mocking action painting, has its own tradition. Here's Roy Lichtenstein with a painting called Yellow and Green Brushstrokes, where he's kind of making fun of the big active gestures of abstract expressionism. And that came out of a dialogue coming all the way from some of the paintings he made that were based off of comic book panels. And so we see a couple examples of that. And he was looking at artwork of the 50s and 60s, like this painting by Franz Klein. And another artist who also kind of plays at this idea of recreating gesture and then trying to make you trying to create a simulation of gesture, so that he's raising the question of what is gesture and what is authentic active mark making, would be someone like Glenn Brown. Glenn Brown's career started primarily with these paintings that were based off of Frank Auerbach, and in the Glenn Brown paintings, the gushy paint looks even more gushy, like it looks so kind of built up and thick and gestural, but it's actually the opposite. It's super flat like a piece of glass. Whereas the actual Frank Auerbach is really impasto. It's very built up as a surface. And here's another Glenn Brown based off of a Frank Auerbach painting. By the way, I've seen that one, the JIM, the Frank Auerbach, the one that's on the left. I think that's the one that's at the Southampton Museum of Art. Um, anyway, moving on. Gary Hume. All right, we'll pick up Gary Hume in part 2. Thank you very much.